Hey everyone, Spicy Toast Gaming here. Hope you're having a great day. Hope this video can make it a little bit better. Today we're going to be going over the weekly nightmares and breaking them down, trying to give you some tips and suggestions on who you want to be using here. So we have our Darius, Galio, and our Viego, all of which always have their set difficulties. Now for the first one, for Darius, we have Ocean's Verse. When either player plays a spell, give their weakest ally elusive this round. So this can benefit you and the enemy. Now, just as a sort of gameplay tip, no matter who you're playing, if you can, try to keep a cheap burst speed spell in hand pretty much at all times. Because one thing you can do, and one thing the enemy can do, is when you get your attack token, you can play that burst speed spell, give your unit elusive, and then immediately attack with them. And then the enemy is going to have a hard time being able to answer and respond to that attack. But the enemy can also do that to you. They can play a burst speed spell, or a focus speed, I guess, is also the case as long as you're the one attacking, and immediately give their unit elusive and try to hit you. So making sure you have a burst speed spell, especially for defense, and then focus speed can also work for offense, just to make sure you can answer, because that is something that the enemy will normally do at least once through this adventure. So if you can have a burst speed spell in hand, pretty good. Next though, the main one, Red as Her Lips. Round start, deal 1 to all units, then grant the foe's units 3 health. So the enemy units are just going to get stronger and stronger, at least as far as health goes, so they're going to be very hard to take out. Now for this one, I really like going for Kench. I played him here and it was actually pretty easy. Now I do have a pretty awesome build for Kench that I will show you that does require epic relics, but is pretty good. For this one though, deal 1 to all units. So this is just hitting your entire board, essentially granting you 2-2, or well, 2-1 after the 1 damage to your entire board. So you get great scaling off of this. And then increasing the enemy's health, you're going to try to just have your Kench on the board, and he can just be using his captures to grab the enemy units. Their health doesn't really matter, he can still just grab them. So Kench is, I think, the best pickup here, especially if you're wanting to clear this with a 3-star champion. I'd go for Kench. Obviously, if you have higher level champions, you can definitely do that here. And then this is one that, as long as you're fast, you'd also probably go for some of the other OP 3-stars that can normally end a lot of adventures in a single round. So like Nidalee, Diana, Master Yi, LeBlanc. Some of those would also work here. My go-to pick would be Kench. Now, as far as what the current best Kench build is, at least in my opinion, it is this right here. So we have Pack Powder, Plunder, I cost 2 less, and then I have 1/1 for each different round you've damaged the enemy nexus. So a bit of scaling, but a big thing is that Plunder. If you don't have this, you could go for Scourge's Stash. Obviously, this is just a better version of it, so use this if you have it. But then the Swain Relic for power, drain 5 from the enemy nexus. Great in general, just to give you a little bit more sustain in case you take damage during your fights. But this goes off at game start, which triggers your Plunder, which lets you drop Kench round 1, which is incredible. Then we also have Chosen by the Stars, Baited and Augment, so both of these help your Kench scale up. But then in Power 10, you get Overwhelm, Regen, and Challenger. These are fantastic for Kench. For one, he's going to be scaling out of control. He's going to be a massive unit, so making sure you can punch through the enemy with that Overwhelm, great. Challenger to make sure you're getting the best trades possible, great. And then with Regen, healing up at the end of the fight, or the end of the round, also incredible. So this right here, fantastic on Kench, getting on the board right away, letting you get those captures off every single round through the course of the game, scaling him like crazy, and then we also have the power of getting damaged 1 every single round. So that is also going to give us insane scaling here. Now for the 5.5 star, so we have Sovereign's Domination. Round start, the foe summons an ephemeral copy of the player's strongest follower that died last round. So try to not have your followers die. Inevitability, round start, grant the foe's units everywhere 1/1. And then Deadly, when the foe summons unit, grant its stats equal to half rounded up, and their spells and skills deal double. These two together are pretty rough, because not only are all the units getting bigger, but all the units they haven't played yet, they're getting bigger from the Inevitability, and then they get even larger from the Deadly, since this is a summon effect. So the enemy here is having pretty big scaling, so you either need to try to end the game incredibly fast, or be able to outscale the enemy, because if you're not ending quickly, they will just overwhelm you. Now, one note for Sovereign's Domination, Viego actually isn't bad here, which is kind of funny, you'd think, since you have your mists dying all the time. that they would just be always getting those. And while that's true, with your Viego, especially based on your level, you can get him on the board and level him up very quickly. And then once he's leveled, he just steals whatever unit they summon. So normally your mist is going to get summoned on the enemy side, and then you're just going to steal that back, which is pretty hilarious. Also note, whatever unit the enemy gets is going to end up being bigger than your unit because it's getting summoned with the deadly power, so it's getting those extra stats as well. So just note, whatever unit they get is going to be even stronger than when you had it. Now, for this one, overall, you can clear this with some of your 3-star champions. I personally was able to clear this with Diana. She is able to get enough early game damage that she can just blast this and normally end in your first 2 attacks. So Diana's really good here. Master Yi, again, would be also very solid. And LeBlanc should also be good here, as well as like Nidalee. Just any of those 3-star champions that pretty much top tier, and you can really just rush down the enemy as fast as possible. That's solid. And you could also go for a control deck here. So you're going for like Yasuo, Morgana, Ashe. Any of those would also be fine. But in general, any of your 5 or 6-star champions you may have should be able to clear this without too much difficulty. Now, as far as the last one, this is pretty interesting. So 2 powers we haven't seen before. Up first, Warm Reception. Game start, the foe summons the 2 different strongest units from their deck. This is strongest units, not strongest followers, so this can summon out champions. Also, the enemies normally have their 1 unit, like in the Swain adventure, that gets summoned at the start of the game. So normally they're summoning 3 units at the start of the game, so that's pretty rough. And we know at least 2 of those units are going to be incredibly strong because it's literally the strongest units from their decks. Then the big thing here, Misbegotten Creation. So the player's created cards cost 3 more. Now, almost, well, not quite all, but the majority of champions in this game have some form of created cards. So just making all of that get shut down is pretty terrible. And of course, you still have the deadly power. So a ton of champions here are countered by this, most obviously being Aurelion Sol, because he's all about created cards. But honestly, if you look through the list of all the champions, the majority of them have some form of created card that this is countering. So even some of your 5 and 6-star champions are going to struggle here. Now, my first thought, since I have 6-star Swain, was to drop him, since he's excellent at clearing the board immediately. Couple issues though. For one, Swain is still bugged where he's not getting his cost increase as early in the game as he is supposed to for reducing down the health of the enemy nexus. That's still bugged. And specifically, the mini boss Anivia has a card that counters him. Try to put it on screen, Eldred, which gives all the enemy units and the enemy nexus tough. So you're not going to be damaging as much, and you're not going to be getting your scaling from damaging the enemy nexus. And then he also scales up the entire enemy board when they survive damage. So he's a pretty hard counter to Swain. So yeah, sadly, Swain didn't do the best here. You could still clear it if you got lucky, but especially with him being bugged still, not a great time. Now, I did clear this with Aurelion Sol, so it is still possible, but this counter does hit you pretty hard. It's going to slow you down immensely. And since you're a lot slower, the enemy, especially since they're starting with 3 units, they're all going to be pretty massive, or normally start with 3 units, I should say. They're going to be putting a lot of pressure on you, and you can actually lose with Aurelion Sol here. Now, as far as some champions that can clear this, even of your 5 and 6 stars, I normally don't list specific ones because normally your 5 and 6 stars can clear this, but even a lot of those are actually getting countered here by this Misbegotten Creation. So some like Darius, if you have him up to a pretty high level, he doesn't really focus on created cards at all, so he should be fine here, able to put a lot of pressure on early. Ashe will be fine, although note with all champions, you need to stay away from anyone that's using things like Spellweaver's Symphony, Grand General's Counterplan, Echoing Spirit, Oath of the Guardians, unless you're kind of running Aesol, or Portal Pals, just any of the relics that are giving you any created cards, obviously stay away from those. But again, some like Viego or Ashe, also Yasuo, Vex, Misfortune, Nora, potentially Volibear, any of those champions that you have up at a like 5 or 6 amount could be able to clear this one. Now, as far as a 3-star champion, Eve is actually solid here. Now, this does still counter your 2nd star power, but normally for Eve, your 2nd star power isn't actually good. You don't want to be utilizing it anyways. Has a bit of anti-synergy with the rest of your kit. So while this does counter part of your kit, it's the part you don't actually care about. So Eve is also solid here. Now for me, I go for this as my Eve build. I think it is pretty much the best build at the moment, especially here. Some people like getting extra copies with like Echoing Spirit. but those created copies are going to cost more, so it's actually not going to help you. But going with this, so you're getting a great amount of control, stunning the entire enemy board. And the Starforged is very nice, just so you can get Eve on the board one round earlier, is actually very powerful. So if you're running Evelyn, this is the go-to build that I would recommend if you can have it. If you don't have Starforged, you can just try for the normal level up relics with like Crown Guard and the Deceiver's Crest. But that extra starting mana is pretty impactful. You're definitely going to feel it here. As far as other 3-star champions, a lot of the ones we like to utilize for these really tough challenges use a lot of created cards. So Diana, normally you're doing a build with Echoing Spirit, and you're playing her champion spell constantly to buff her up. Master Yi, again, you're spamming your same spells all the time. They're all created cards. Nidalee even, you're making her ambush card, you're making her clever camouflage, I think it is, when you have the attack token, so she actually has a lot of created cards as well. LeBlanc could be better here. She still does generate and have created cards as well, but her level up effect is so strong, and that second star power is so strong, that you might be able to clear this if you get lucky. Now again, you can go for more of the control decks, such as Yasuo or Morgana. Morgana is going to be a lot weaker here than normal. For one, you almost always want to run Grand General's Counterplan on her to get more copies of her champion spell every round. Can't really do that here because it's going to cost too much. Also, if you use her champion spell, it has Invoke, which is giving you more created cards. So Morgana is going to be much weaker than normal. Yasuo, you still often do run builds with like Echoing Spirit or Grand Generals, so you will have to switch it up a little bit. But Yasuo could be pretty good here. Overall, this is a pretty tough one. You can still go into this for champions that have created cards, like I did with Aurelion Sol, but it's going to be way harder. Again, great to break out any of your champions, especially 5 and 6 stars that don't really rely on created cards. So again, like Darius, Ashe, Viego, Yasuo, Vex, Nora, Misfortune, Volibear, any of those champions you have at 5 or 6 stars will be pretty solid here. And as far as a 3-star, Evelyn is probably your best bet for this one. Although if you had like a 3-star Yasuo, he could be pretty good here as well. All right, that's it from me. I hope this was able to help you out. Now, if this did help you out at all, or if you just appreciate all this daily Path of Champions coverage, a like and subscribe is greatly appreciated. I hope you have a great rest of your day.